Welcome to the God-Centered Recovery Podcast, brought to you by Narrowgate Ministries. This podcast is dedicated to giving you a God-centered approach to recovery and to life. Follow along. Let's get started. Welcome, everybody, to the God-Centered Recovery Podcast. Glad to be back at you again. Super excited about today's guest. We connected on Facebook, and his name is Philip Cohen. Welcome, brother.
Thank you.
Awesome. So tell us a little about you before we dive in, as far as you know what you do for business, your life. You got, or your husband, you have children, the little tidbits.
Well, there's definitely a lot there. So yes, I am. I apologize. Yes,
Oh, no worries.
I am. I recently remarried got married for the second time. So I am currently a husband. Originally married my high school sweetheart. We had one son whom we lost in a tragic event in July of 2015. So people say yes. It's hard for me to say yes. I am a father, but I have a son that is forever 14 and a half.
Wow.
For work, essentially, I work with a lot of early and growth stage startups, helping them to generate revenue really by implementing modern methodologies, technologies, and best practices.
Nice.
So consultant mostly for early stage and growth stage startups. Yep. And that's my profession. That's what I do for a living. But my passion is really, doing things like this and starting to speak on stage about, a little bit about my story and what God has taken me through and, helping other people if I can.
Wow. That's awesome, brother.
Yeah.
We're kind of similar. And, I married my high school sweetheart. We got together when we were like 15 and 17, somewhere right in there. Went to prom, but somewhere, awesome 10 years. And then my father died from an overdose of heroin. And it was a really tough thing. I didn't know how to cope. I didn't have the skills. I decided to do alcohol and just go down that hole. And it took about probably 4 years for that to destroy my marriage. And it taught me a lot. And I, like you, starting over. But man, so you lost your son, you said, right?
Correct.
14 and a half years old, about 5 years ago.
July 24th, 2015.
Man, that is some tough stuff. So let's talk about that for a minute, since that's the first thing to get brought up. Like, I couldn't even imagine. So take us back there. What was that like?
Yeah, it's honestly, it's something that you don't want to imagine. Really, it's not someplace you ever want to put yourself there, and but it's really indescribable. So it was you may have even heard about this. This was it was on the news for about a week. So there was two boys that left Jupiter, Florida, on a boat on a fishing trip, and a couple of days later, their boat was found capsized by Coast Guard. But the short story is they never found either one of the boys. So Perry Cohen was my only son. So I lost my only child that day. And really, my story is not so much about, Perry, and I mean, definitely Perry and what happened to me is a big part of, I think about some of the things we could talk about today and what's gotten me through that,
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
But really, to be able to completely really lose my identity, that I was, forever changed on that day. Obviously, there's
Right.
definitely a different feel from, pre-July 24th and post-July 24th. Yeah, but I could tell you that, especially being on a show like this isn't something that I share with a lot of people. But it was my mom was saved like when I was really young, preaching at me forever. Back then, I didn't want to hear about it. I was a kid. long hair, like definitely troublemaker. I was into
Right.
Metallica, I didn't want any of it. Totally, totally. Got my rebel stage out early,
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And then, so, you know, after my divorce, so, everybody was still close by. I was still close by to my ex and my son. But, I remember feeling this feeling really from the divorce of like, maybe a little bit of depression, but I couldn't really explain it fully. So walked into a local church and the pastor was speaking, just crazy, right? That actually happened to be this way. The pastor was speaking about divorce, and he was held up a black piece of paper and a white piece of paper, representing man and woman, and glued them together. Glue representing God, and saying that when you become married, you become one, right?
Mhm.
And then he pulled out, another set from under the pulpit that had been dry already, and then ripped them apart, essentially, the black from the white, and then held it up to the congregation and said, that, you'll never exit a marriage the same way you went in because you made a commitment to God. There's always going to be some black on the white and some white on the black. It's just never going to be a clean break, so
Wow.
like it
That's
really
good.
explained what I was feeling. So, I remember going home and picking up a Bible and starting reading things and then starting to talk to my friends about it. And I remember my friends being like, so that's great, Phil. That's great that that's working for you. So you
Nice.
believe that people live to be 400 years old? You believe that someone lived in the belly of a whale for 3 days? Like, you believe that? And, and I hated that I couldn't talk to that intelligently. Like,
Right.
it was just more fairy tale. I couldn't really speak to it. So, there's a lot here, but this led me into like apologetics and trying to understand how one thing led to another. And the Bible, my gosh, when you realize like this is, it's so much more than just a book or 66 books, right? Yeah, I mean, there's so many things, even just like in Genesis, right from the very beginning. I don't know if you've ever seen like how the genealogy of from Adam to
Yeah.
Noah,
Uh-huh.
yeah, so that whole thing, and just and there's just so much that's there, right? So during this, back to this tragic event, I remember about 4 or 5 days into it, and I realized I was never going to see my son again, and I went in another room, and I remember, this is a really a turning point for me because, you know, it was so easy to be like, you know, there is no God, everything I've
Right.
learned. How could you do this to me? And I remember thinking like, you lost your son too, but you knew you were getting him back in 3 days. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
It's a big difference, huh?
you know this pain, but why would you do this to me? And I remember thinking like, think, I don't know. I think it's in James, or maybe I don't know exactly where this is. I should know. But I remember getting on my face and saying, okay, God, thank you. Like, I have no idea why I'm saying thank you, but I know that's what I'm supposed to do because your word says to thank you in all things, right? Like, so
Right.
that in some way there's going to be a greater good that's going to come from this. I don't know what it is. I still don't know exactly what it is, 100%. I mean, maybe it's already happened, maybe it's still to come. I mean, but I couldn't turn my back on the word. It was either going to be like everything I've read and everything I've studied, was either BS or wasn't. So that's kind
Right.
of really the power.
Yeah. I think, we got two paths that we can travel on those traumatic events. Um, in the long run, they can make us bitter or better. You know what I mean? And we can either sink down into really a pit and never climb out. Because I personally think it's normal to kind of go through the pit. It's part of the grieving process, going through the pain, acknowledging it, and all that stuff. But we a lot of people camp out there, right? And I was one that I camped out there for a couple of years. Like, I'm just going to sit in this pit. Um, what helped you go through the process kind of quicker and just kind of come through it? Maybe not like staying in the pit, but what kind of just brought you through the whole process?
Yeah, well, a lot of things, number one, being so grateful and thankful for at least being kind of a seeker of knowledge type to understand, from the books, and especially the Bible, but others as well, which are essentially plagiarism from the Bible in some way or fashion. But, the power of thoughts and words, and to understand, like you said, to go into that pit or to sit in that recliner and let that movie play is a conscious decision. It's a
Yeah.
choice to
Yeah.
sit there or not. So, one thing that was, is that my foundation of knowledge, knowing that, I'm not going to live there, that it's a choice.
Yeah.
And secondly, my son, I know for a fact that Perry, in the times when I do find myself curled up in a ball, I picture him saying, get up, Dad, get up,
Yeah.
go live your life, like I know you'd want me to, and I'll see you when you get here. I won't, yeah, being in that space doesn't serve you, doesn't serve your family, doesn't serve, people who love you. So really, it's those things, I think.
Yeah. That's powerful. I think we're tempted during pain and loss to just forsake everything that we know and stuff like that. I lost my dad from a heroin overdose, and my mom died from cancer because she was addicted to heroin too.
Oh,
And experiencing the pain and the loss of all those things, it's hard to see God's love sometimes, right? Like, so I think the question I have for you is like, how do we see God's love even though we're going through difficult times?
it took me a while, it took me a while. It definitely, there was a point of not even wanting to hear from God. Like, even though
Right.
I didn't turn my back on him, like I wasn't like, to curse him. It was, I didn't want to, I wasn't paying attention to my spirit man, that part that was connected to me, so number one, making that choice to do that, to make that connection, to stop and take a moment to breathe and pray and make sure that you're connecting with God, and getting those messages,
Right. Right.
of what he wants from you and for you in your life, and you'll know when it's him. I know sometimes people have a hard time, but I think it's being connected to that, and then what you hear, and then doing those things that you hear him
Yeah.
asking you to do.
Yeah, that's good. I think I would add to that, just it's okay to be sad, right? Because we're told, cheer up, everything's going to be okay. All these worst cliches that people give you when you're in trauma and loss. And just the fact that it's okay to be angry and that I can express that um, to God, to another person, um, is kind of freeing because we're supposed to put on this facade of holiness or everything's okay, and the reality is when these things happen to us, we're not okay. Right, everything is not okay, it's not well, and let's not pretend that it is.
Right, that's right. It was, so, well, another kind of long story. There's so much here, and I'm trying to, condense it down for this version. But I went to a therapist, and so a friend of a friend, and I kept on hearing so much about EMDR therapy. I don't know if you know anything about EMDR
Is that
therapy or
like
not.
tapping or what?
It's a yeah. They either can use lights, or sometimes it could be something in your hand going back and forth. And
Yeah, a little bit.
so, um, you know, the first question she asked me was, have you grieved properly?
Right.
And I was like, I don't know. I mean, how do you know, really, we're not taught that there is a grieving process really
We're
throughout
not.
school or
Right.
anywhere. I didn't know that there was something I should do, and, definitely wasn't afraid to do it, but wasn't sure of those steps, but I think, like you said, absolutely. In being angry and talking about it and facing it, as opposed to just burying it somewhere, because it's going to come up in some way, whether it's a form of an addiction or a habit
Right.
or outburst or something, it's going to come up in some way.
It is.
facing those things, head on, there's power on the other side of that,
There is.
so
One thing, the revelation I got was, you got that grieving process and you got certain steps of denial and not willing to look at what actually happened and pretending and burying and stuffing. But right before the coming out stage is the recognition and the honesty about the feelings, the experiencing it, letting out the rage, the anger, everything that's associated with that. And then right on the other side of that is kind of acceptance and freedom. But the problem is that we stay a couple steps from this process, and like I said, we live there, and because we're not willing to express our feelings, then we stuff them, and like you said, alcohol, drugs, marijuana, you know, all of these things come into play, and it's like you're just one step from freedom. One step from freedom. uh so
absolutely.
yeah.
It's amazing. The one thing I can say, like, and I've done all of those things. I've definitely had my struggles, just like anybody else, and still do. But you know, the one thing I've learned, in going through these things is that those in those moments when you're pulled to go and do that addictive behavior, to stop for a second, instead of just go and do it, and just because it's so easy to just go and do it, to
Mhm.
stop for a second, recognize that it's there, sit with it for a second, sit with that pain, and go through it and understand why, why is
Yeah.
that happening? Because if you can remove that alcohol, smoking, pornography, you start removing those things from your life, and good things start to happen. It's definitely, there is a spiritual battle, so the enemy wants us to be thinking those negative thoughts and wants
Mhm.
us to be doing those negative behaviors because it's keeping us from your true purpose,
Yeah. Mm. Yeah, I want to dive into purpose just for a minute because, looking back and, the childhood that I had being taken away and, all the trauma, the pain, everything, just balled up. And if we can figure out meaning and purpose to all this, like, for example, my father's overdose, is the passion that I'm talking to you today and to reaching out to other men so their sons don't have to experience the same thing. So I think my question in all this is, how do we discover our purpose and how do we kind of know it's from God, I guess?
I mean, gosh, that's such a good question, right? It's like if there was a definite answer to that.
Here's your purpose.
That would be good. But there are some key things, there, like I said, I've always been that seeker of knowledge type. I love to listen to books, so I listen to lots of books. And, there are some things that do resonate, I think, probably, definitely with me and probably with a lot of other men or really anybody, And some of those things for me, I think, is, to know when you're in your brain and when you're in your body. Like if I were to say, to stop and just think about for a second, and feel the part of you that's just happy to be alive.
Uh-huh.
That's in your body. That's never really in your head. It's always in your body, So like when you think about those things that are passionate or, that are maybe what God wants you to do, they'll feel like a 10 in your body. And I've walked through this with some people, like, and there's an exercise that when a bunch of questions that I would ask essentially is saying, okay, so let's talk about, being on a podcast, starting your own business, meditation,
Right. Just,
jumping out of an airplane, writing a book. Which one of those are tens in your body? A 10, an absolute 10.
yeah.
So pay attention, I think, to what's in your body. I think also it generally is something that probably people have always said you've been good at, like, hey, you're good at this, but to you it's like, whatever. But to everybody else, it's you're good at it.
Right. Right.
Something maybe in there, like,
Yeah.
something there.
It,
But
it
there
was
are,
so funny when when you said those words, podcasting and start your own business, my body literally went like this,
Yeah,
just like 1 inch. Like I'm slouchy
yeah.
just a little bit. You said podcasting, start a business, and I just
I, I
it
actually
was
feel like
so
I noticed
funny.
that.
Yeah, that
I
was so
actually feel like
funny.
I noticed that.
uh,
But it's so true, you know.
yeah.
And then realizing here, I think the hard part really is let's say even so for me realizing, I've been in sales my entire life. I've always been, helping companies, mostly like SaaS companies, generate revenue. And then, but I realized I'm really not a great employee. Not that
Me
not that I don't
neither.
do good work. It's
Yeah.
just that, I feel like I'm much more visionary than I am employee,
Yeah.
So, and, going to be a consultant is something that, I feel like God was calling me to do because I want to work with, my definition of success is being able to work with, who you want, when you want,
Mhm.
and whenever you want. Right. Um, so I want to work with these people and I want to be able to maybe then move on if I want to, because I feel like once I got something dialed in, but also to speak. God's had it on my heart to speak. I don't even still know where that's going to take me, whether it's going to be at schools, at churches, helping people in some way. But
Yeah.
I know that's what God wants me to do. And I know it's for the greater good. Like it's going to help other people.
Yeah.
And that's
It's
the other way.
powerful. Man, that just sparks in my mind what, the faith-based community needs is, powerful businessmen and entrepreneurs to rise up and to train the younger generation to kind of step into that.
Yes. Yeah.
I just feel that it's really lacking in the community, and it's one of my whys that I put on my whiteboard here is to instill that into my children. You know what I mean? So they can see their dad. It's scary at times. Anybody who's an entrepreneur, it's scary.
Yep.
There's ups and downs. It requires a lot of faith. But they're seeing it at each step of the way, and they're
Yes.
like, and it's creating a different paradigm and belief system for them.
I
It's so
love that.
needed.
Love that.
So needed in
And
the
it's
world
so
today.
true. I mean, there's so much here that I feel like I can tie back. I feel like I know this is a podcast, but that I want to even share with you. But do you know John Lee Dumas,
Yeah.
entrepreneur on fire?
Uh-huh.
Okay. So
Entrepreneur on fire. Yeah.
So really, gosh, this is back even. So I owned a sign business when I lived in Florida. This is pre 2015. So did vehicle wraps, boat wraps, and I was listening to JLD, and he was interviewing Josh Shipp.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if you know Josh.
I
Josh
don't.
Shipp is like a really well-known speaker at, youth speaker, speaks at a lot of schools. And I realized that people can actually make a living like speaking at schools in an effort to inspire and influence youth. I didn't even realize things that do that. So, it's so great that you're doing that and that you're sharing that. And, when I would take Perry to school, we would listen to Entrepreneur on Fire, they would just talk about like, people like that would take the leap, that
Yeah.
actually listened to what was inside of them and stepped into that and moved forward,
Yeah.
with it. So that's awesome.
Yeah. And I just throw this idea out there for anybody this is a podcast. It's about men, it's about recovery, it's about God. But it's about business also. But so I spent about 7 years in a treatment center environment as a supervisor helping youth boys. I had 12 boys and 12 staff. And I did that for about 7 years. But, at the end there, all my mind was thinking was the possibilities, like what if, and so I would say to men out there who are starting to, the 9 to 5 job or whatever it is, it's getting a little bit tiresome. And all of a sudden you're getting these thoughts and ideas about, new things and what the possibilities and stuff. That might be your calling to become an entrepreneur. And that doesn't mean you don't just throw your career away. I didn't do that. I gradually did stuff on my off hours that built it up until it overtook and consumed. And then you just, step away and say, thank you very much. Appreciate everything you taught me. But yeah, if you're feeling that, that's probably, the tug of God to step out.
Absolutely. God will let you know. He will let you know if you're not on the path that he wants you on. Life will be uncomfortable,
Yeah.
and it will continue to show you the same things over and over. And the biggest thing is exactly what you just said. So for those people that are listening and do feel that, that tug from God, or know that this is something that they should do, take action. Just do something. Step into it, do something. If it is what's meant for you, you'll see a result from that,
Yeah.
because God, the universe, whatever that you want to call it, it will open up and it will show you that that was a good move and that you should continue going. So just take action.
Yeah. That's powerful. So my last question is centered around kind of self-worth and being raised in a traumatic environment, chaos and all those things. Um, it's pretty much kind of like beat down, as a kid, and then coming into my teenage years, just in addiction and stuff. So, needless to say, I had all these negative beliefs, all these mindsets, all this trash that I carried into my adult life. And, I felt worthless and my value was, really, really low. And there was really no way to really go forward until I began to deal with the self worth issues. Um, can you talk a little bit about, those sort of things?
Yeah. I mean, I, I apologize. I didn't know your story, and my God, what a powerful story. I mean, I feel like I want to ask you, really, even. Maybe I should go back and listen to some of them where you explain how did you overcome that? Like,
Right,
whatever the steps you took to be able to get past all of that. I mean,
right.
because it definitely takes a lot to do that. You
It
know,
does.
to
Well, I'll
just
start off here with the conversation. The first one was a powerful man mentor. You know what I
mm,
mean? And
yes,
who stepped into my life and showed me what a good marriage was. He showed me, what it means to have a family. He showed me what it was like to take care of a home and have nice things. He was this overall whole. He even showed me how to take care of your body. Went to the gym and was fit, and so I had this like model and this holistic example of this is what a man is. And so part of that was soaking all that up. You know what I mean? And just really
that's
letting
awesome.
it sink in and then begin to, shift my mindset. So that was the start.
So, I mean, that's, you just said it. I think, is it Romans 12:2? I don't, where
Yes. Transformed by the renewing of your mind. Yes.
that's just, man, I'll tell you, here's the thing. It's, that's why I say, like, there's this, I think, like, all these books are biblical plagiarism.
They are.
If people can get two things, I think, I mean, there's so many, but just two. Number one, as a man thinketh, so is he, right?
Mhm.
So what you think about, you become. Where focus goes, energy flows, right? So you got to
Yeah.
understand, number one, that little thing that's talking to you all the time that exists, a lot of the times, just like, I think, just like gravity is pulling things towards the center of the earth constantly, we're programmed to think negative,
Right.
to just know that that's happening. So just to know that, pay attention to your thoughts. So number one, and then speak things that be not as though they are, right? Words are powerful. God said, let there be light. God spoke the world into existence. He didn't make the world, he spoke the world. So just thoughts and words are just so incredibly powerful, to just know that. Um, but yeah,
That's good.
so there was, I didn't grow up obviously with as much pain, but for me, after losing my son, and I remember even, walking through an office where I knew some people knew who I was. It was going for an interview or something right back in those days. And I remember thinking, what is a man who's lost his son at sea supposed to look like? You know what I mean? Like, how am I
Mhm.
supposed to I completely lost who I was and connection to who I was.
Yeah.
Um, so, and even coming out of that, but to know that all those negative thoughts, all those things that tell you that you're not enough, that you're not pretty enough, that you're not smart enough,
Mm.
all that is BS.
Oh,
That's
that's
all
good.
that is. It's all BS. It's
It
all
is.
it's all complete and total lies, that are meant there from the enemy to stop you from moving into your life of
Mm.
abundance.
That's so good. My mind's just whoo, all over the place. But the first thing I want to point out is that we fall for these lies because we don't challenge them. So we hear them, right? We think them in this programming and thoughts that come into our mind, and they go unchallenged. Therefore, we accept them as true, and then we go ahead and play them out in our behavior, and we don't call BS. And the most simple way for me is like we look at the evidence, right? I'm a loser. You get the statement, I'm a loser. So we look at it and go, is that true? And as my mentor, is that true 100% of the time? Is that true? You know what I mean? And just really dissect these and break these down and look for all the evidence to the contrary. Here's all the reasons why I'm not a loser and go into, you know what I mean? And we don't have this conversation, we don't challenge it, and it's very detrimental to our lives.
Totally, and also the other thing to think about, if I might add, I know, is to think about the questions that you're even asking yourself. So, like you just said something that I feel like we could talk about for an hour, which is that your brain is a servo mechanism. So essentially, it's like if you said why am I so stupid? Why do I keep doing things like that? Your brain is going to show you why. It's going to pull all those things up. It's going to show you why you're so stupid. It's going to show you why you keep doing things like that. But instead, if you think, okay, that was a mistake, what can I do better next time to stop that from happening? It will show you the answers to that question, which is a much
That
better question to ask yourself than
is
why
so
am I so
amazing. That is
stupid?
so amazing.
Yeah.
I
Uh,
think we really need to grab hold of that revelation. Because
uh,
yeah, why am I so stupid? The brain's pop, 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 pop. That's why.
exactly. It will show you. It will show you
Uh,
the reasons why.
that's hilarious.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna hold on to that one because that one's good.
Uh,
All right, brother. So we're running out of time, but I wanted to give you the opportunity to talk to somebody who's struggling. They're in pain. They're in trauma. They experience something similar to you and to me. What word of encouragement would you give to them? Um, they might be sedating. They might be in addiction, pornography, and all these things to get some sort of comfort and stuff everything that they're feeling. What word of encouragement would you give to them?
I think really the first thing is to, if you can, to stop and pray and to try and get an idea of, where you're supposed to be, for somebody that's been through any type of trauma, to know that, you know, that pain is going to be there for some time. There is no instant healing. There is no, and it will be there forever. It's not like that ever goes away. But there are things that you can do, other than something that's damaging, a damaging type behavior like pornography or drugs, because when you do those things, you're just masking that pain.
Yeah.
But you absolutely 100% must face that pain. At some point, you have to stop and either stop doing what you're doing or start facing whatever it is that you need to face. But wherever you are right now in your life, you are there for a reason. God's showing you something. Try to figure out what it is. And instead of, being having that victim mentality and thinking,
Yeah.
why is this happening to me? Think about, why is this happening for me?
Mhm.
Because it is happening for you. And it's all about figuring out what that reason is and making it and moving forward from there. And I know that's easier said than done. But the one thing I feel like in talking to so many different people is that I know I didn't go through what you've been going through and whatever your challenge is, but I've been through something pretty horrible,
Right.
and I know there is a way out, and I did it, and so can you. And I'd love to help anybody out there in any way that I can. I know that's easier said than done, but there is a way.
That's powerful. So, how can people connect with you if they want to reach out to you, know more about you, maybe even in business? But how can they find you?
I'm on LinkedIn. I've never been huge on social media. This is kind of like my beginning steps of what God
Nice.
is guiding me to do. It's even been a long time since I posted on Facebook because I thought I wasn't supposed to have fun. That's what I thought, and so this is something I'm going to continue to do. So I'm on LinkedIn. An email. My email address is Phil, so PHIL at hirefilcohen.com. So that's HIREPHILCOHEN.com. So Phil at hirefilcohen.com. I am working on building a website to be able to talk about all these things, but this is just the very beginning steps of that. But I'd
That's
love to hear
awesome.
from anybody. Yeah,
That's awesome, brother. Well, I appreciate you. Thank you for your time
my
and
pleasure.
speaking to this important topic, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you. It's been a
Thank you.
pleasure.